Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. As you can see, the title of my presentation is called Performing Manual in the Library. Oh, that would be nice. Thank you. Yes. Is that better? Yes. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I hope you find it interesting and relevant to the theme of the conference. Okay, so here we go. This lightning talk focuses on the initial development of Manual as an exploratory and sensorial artist project created with libraries in mind, how Manual evolved over time, and how it navigates through the institutional frameworks of the libraries that host it. My research is based on an analysis of documentation about Manual, published reviews of the performance, and a recent online interview I carried out with the artists who are responsible for the project, Adam Kinner and Christopher Willis. When Manual premiered at my institution in 2022, I had the opportunity to coordinate its presentation in our library and to take part in the performance itself. Manual was a great success with more than 50 performances having taken place over the course of 3 short days. Since that time, Manual has traveled across Canada and has been presented in England, Scotland, Thailand, and Japan, with plans to revisit some of these countries and to travel to Finland and Switzerland. To understand how Manual evolved over time, I also interviewed David Stokes, Library Services Manager, Reader Services, Library of Birmingham, who coordinated the presentation of Manual at his library in 2024, and who is also a participant. I'd like to thank Kinner, Willis, and Stokes for agreeing to the interviews and for sharing their insights with me. In early 2022, Kinner Willis and a representative of LaTour, which is an organization that supports emerging art practices, asked Concordia University's Webster Library to host a special project that was under development. Manual was to be programmed within the context of the Offta Live Art Festival in Montreal in the summer. In their application to present Manual at our library, Kinner and Willis described it in the following way. Two people, so quote, two people meet and sit next to each other in a public library. With headphones on, they are guided through a series of tiny actions, a manual for their meeting. Silently, they look at books together. They read to each other and flip through an elaborate homemade book that contains the traces of many readings. They listen to music that holds a ghostly presence in the space. And as these activities progress, they create a web of reflections on the act of listening and the intimacy of reading together. By the end, the viewer is left alone to reckon with the books not as objects, but as shared experiences in time, and the public library as a site of collective memory. End quote. Manual is a one-on-one performance that lasts between 40 and 45 minutes. It takes place in several stages and in numerous locations within a host library. A participant is initially greeted by a stage manager near the entrance of the library, and then listens to a short poetic text before the two begin a walkthrough of the library. They take time to observe several architectural spaces and features and listen to obscure sounds over the normal din of the library. Eventually, the stage manager asks the participant to close their eyes, to imagine that a distant sound is actually a river, and then to take 10 deep breaths before reopening their eyes. By the time the participant completes this request, the stage manager has been replaced by a performer, and it's at this moment that Manual actually begins. Participants have often reported feeling disoriented by this prologue. In a 2023 published review for the Take Me Somewhere Festival, Elspeth Wilson noted that, quote, when I reopened my eyes at the start of the performance, it already felt like something had shifted, that I transitioned into a different way of being in the library, and this invitation compounds my sense of slipping into a new relationship with the space, end quote. Generally speaking, the performer will only communicate through a series of messages inscribed in a notebook. Manual proceeds with several performer-led activities based on prearranged visual and auditory cues. These prompts draw from the photography books selected from the library's own collection and a headset with immersive recordings which is lent to the participant. What begins as a thought-provoking combination of familiar images and sounds eventually gives way to unexpected and incongruous juxtapositions of abstract photographs and audio. Towards the end of Manual, the performance moves to yet another area of the library where the participant is invited to take part in an unscripted game of word association based on an abstract image from a library book. This is the first and only time the performer and participant speak to each other, and even then it's in hushed tones. As Manual draws to a close, the performer leaves while the participant listens to an epilogue recording. In it, the performer invites the participant to continue to wander and to think about the library as a social space where people come and go and where books reflect shared experiences. The stage manager will be waiting for the participant near the library entrance in order to collect the headset to offer the participant a list of references consulted in the performance and to give them an opportunity to leave comments in a guest book. There's a dreamlike quality to Manual. It can be both calming and unsettling. In 2024, Sam Moore published a review of Manual for Frieze when it was presented in the Library of Birmingham as part of the Fierce Festival. Moore stated that it, quote, rendered the institutional building simultaneously a profoundly intimate and overwhelming space, full of strange sounds and free associations, end quote. And that, quote, it was a profound experience, felt within the body, yet ephemeral all at once, end quote. David Stokes also had the opportunity to participate in Manual in 2024. Despite his years of work in the Library of Birmingham and his familiarity with its premises, he was not prepared for such a striking experience that left him feeling transported. Like my own reaction to Manual, Stokes said he required a few minutes to reorient himself to the day-to-day reality of the library once the performance ended. From my interview with the artists, I learned that Manual was conceived in 2019 during an Offta-supported residency at the Mitchell Library in Glasgow, Scotland. As it was being developed over the next few years, they brought in choreographer Hannah Sybil Mueller as dramaturg. Mueller helped to transform some of their ideas into embodied library-based actions, and she performed Manual with them and other artists at the Webster Library. On this second to last slide, I'll highlight some of the key takeaways about Manual, its evolution, and its navigation of institutional frameworks. Kinner and Willis train local artists and non-artists as performers whenever they bring Manual to a new city or country. These performers speak the local language and can contribute their own book selections to support individualized performances. The artists continue to carry out on-site explorations of the unique spaces and collections of each new venue prior to performing Manual. Although the performance evolves each time it's presented, the artist's interest in exploring complex relationships with images, text, sounds, and library spaces remains constant. Inasmuch as Manual asks their audience to reflect upon how they relate to libraries, it holds a mirror up to library workers and shows us the boundaries of our own institutional frameworks. When Manual was first proposed to our library, many concerns were raised regarding its potential to disturb our users and with security and privacy issues, especially if there were plans to film in the library. Questions about reserving library tables, taking books out of circulation, storage, and the makeup of participants was also raised. To their credit, Kinner and Willis were very attentive and understanding of these issues, and I believe their experience with our library informed their future work. Manual is an iterative process for the artists. They learn from each venue and refine their future proposals accordingly. In my interview with Stokes, I learned that the artist had anticipated many of the library's questions and concerns. Kinner and Willis recognize that it's helpful when the institutions they approach are curious about their project and if there's an advocate for it on the inside. For both the Library of Birmingham and the Webster Library, we try to adhere to the spirit of our library's rules, but recognize the value of being flexible and for making exceptions to accommodating the project. Projects like Manual will pose many administrative and logistical challenges for the libraries that host them, but they can also be rewarding for everyone involved. The public will see their libraries and collections in a new light. For artists, the library becomes an incubator for creative research, and as host libraries, we're given an opportunity to critically reflect on our spaces, our holdings and policies, and our roles within the greater communities that we serve. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. The end.